Let me say a special good morning to our listeners of Classic Radio, of course, the viewers of GBN TV. Good morning and welcome to another edition of To The Point. It's Wednesday, the 28th day of January 2026. Those of you who are social media platforms, good morning to you also. Whether it's a Facebook page, YouTube channels, good morning and welcome. You know, usually on Wednesdays, on To The Point, we usually host various departments within government. Today we do have representing the Cannabis Committee here with us this morning. Some representative of are part of the Cannabis Committee, I should say. They're with us this morning. We have, of course, Mr. Vannie Curwen with us this morning, and also, should I say Miss Nandy, of course, Noel with us this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome once again.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having us, GT.
Certainly, you're welcome. You're certainly welcome. You're welcome. As a formal introduction this morning into the program, before we get rolling and deep into the conversation, I of course, give you folks opportunity to our listening and viewing audience, state your position within the Cannabis Committee. Who's going to take the lead on that this morning?
I'll yield to my CEO.
So, right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nandy Noel. I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Grenada Cannabis Commission for Legalization and Regulation Secretariat. And my role overall in this whole process is to act as a bridge between the government and the cabinet mandate and the working committee, and help to lead not just the working committee and the secretariat, but everyone as a whole from a period of prohibition into a new period. It's a whole paradigm shift where we think of cannabis as a plant and what we can benefit from it, as opposed to thinking of it as a drug. So Thank you for having me this morning.
Well, I am a household name in GBA now. Everybody know who I am. I'm a member of that committee. In fact, I was a member of the previous committee that started the work, and we didn't get very much far. And this new committee, part of that, representing the Royal Grenada Police Force, bringing a perspective of law enforcement to the whole discussion and debate about the decriminalization. And together we have built a really good, or advised on a very good draft that has gone to Parliament, debated on, and we're here to discuss, whatever provisions of the Act that comes up for discussion.
All right, great. Because I think we're getting off on a good note. Because as of January 2026, Grenada has officially moved towards, towards the decriminalization of cannabis, and it's proof. The major improvements or approved major legislation as relation to that. To get the conversation started off this morning. Decriminalization versus legalization. I'm not going to break that down for me for the average individual who's listening, because folks sometimes may have a little bit of misunderstanding in relation to it. Folks may say, is it legalized in Grenada now, or is it just decriminalized in Grenada now? Who's going to go with that for me?
I can start, and I'm going to say it in very simple terms. Legalization is... This is a pretty terrible example, but it's like coconut trees. You can plant as many coconut trees as you want. You can do whatever you want to do with those coconut trees. Yeah. Decriminalization, on the other hand, would put some regulatory measures on what you can do with cannabis, how many plants, who can have access to it, who can use it, whether it can be imported or exported. So that's the main difference between full legalization. You can do whatever you want with it, as opposed to decriminalization. There are regulations and guidelines and measures that every citizen needs to follow by law.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Put another way, Glen, legalization speaks of no restrictions. Any and everybody could have it, any amount you can have.
So as you want.
As much as you want, yes. Decriminalization allows you to have specific quantities that is controlled by the state. So one is free for all, the other one is a selected group of people that can have it. And that's the difference. You would not be criminalized, you would not be charged and prosecuted in the decriminalization process. In the legalization process, there is no court procedure because there is no restrictions. So when this is legalized, you have no restrictions at all. Anybody can have any quantity, anywhere, any place, anytime. It's legalized for everybody. Decriminalization is different. It is still legal, but the government allows you to have a specific quantity in specific places for specific age group of people. And that's one of the layman's difference here.
Okay, so in a layman terms, you say in Grenada has gone to the decriminalization part
yes.
of it,
Yes.
not the legalization.
Not the legalization.
And I certainly hope listeners and viewers, because sometimes I hear the conversations out on the street from time to time. Hey, we're free to smoke now. The regular talk on the street, but its process is decriminalization, which is not legalized in any way.
And to just take your point a bit further, though you might be free to smoke, where you smoke now becomes an issue under this new legislation. It's no longer you can light your space up in public places and smoke. So we want to make it clear to people, decriminalization does not mean free access to do whatever you want, wherever you want with marijuana. There are restrictions.
So when we have that full implementation of the legislation that will come through and the decriminalization process, and saying, as you mentioned, we probably could get into that part of the conversation now. In terms of individuals, because from time to time we do see individuals feel that it's free to smoke wherever they want to. You understand? We do see that happening. People stand by the roadside, people driving in their cars, and they do that. As it stands, when we have that full implementation of the amended law to come, and folks are no longer permitted to do that. Are you saying that that's how it stands, Curwen?
Yes. You would no longer have access to smoking marijuana in public places, around schools and, other public places, workplaces, etc. The decriminalization process allows you to smoke, but it gives you the comfort of doing that in your own home. You stay at your home and do what you want to do with whatever the law allows you to do. Other people should not be having secondary issues with what you choose to do. In fact, I don't want to if I don't want to smoke, and I am not a smoker and I will not be smoking. If you choose to smoke, I don't want to inhale your smoke. If you think that you have a passion, there is something about marijuana that is unique to you, fine. Then sit in the comfort of your home and have as much marijuana as you can have. That's you alone in your comfort. The public should not be exposed to what you choose to do.
Okay, I understand.
Agreed.
So anything you want to add to that?
Yes, please. So one of the biggest things that we took into consideration as a working committee, and just so you know, our work didn't just start in January 2026. These are discussions that we would have had as a working committee and with Cabinet starting April 2024. And the biggest thing that we focused on in 2024 was our policy statement for cannabis decriminalization for medicinal, therapeutic, scientific, religious, and private use. And the underlying essence of our policy statement was focused on a couple ethos, mainly social justice, social equity, public health and safety, and the protection of young persons and children. So just to add to what ACP Curwen would have said, with regards to our prohibition on public smoking, we decided that the best way to move forward, just to have individuals know that it's not essentially free for all, is implementing something called, or proposing something called, a fixed penalty system.
Okay.
So if anybody is caught smoking in particular areas, it's listed in the schedule at the end of the proposed bill, then the police will charge that fixed penalty fine that would act as a ticket. And we're proposing 300 to begin with.
Yes.
And our hope is that as adults, everyone over the age of 21 who chooses to use, that they would follow the stipulations as directed by the law.
All right. As it stands right now, the legal age for anyone being in possession of marijuana should be is 21.
That is correct.
All right. As it stands right now.
As it stands right now, there is no law because the act has not yet passed.
Yes.
What is proposed in this new act is that it's going to be 21 years and up. But until that law gets ascended to by the Governor General, it's not yet law. It's debated in Parliament last week in the lower house. The upper house have to debate it. Then it goes to the Governor General for ascension. Then it becomes law. Once it becomes law, yes, the age is going to be 21 and up.
All right. And the amendment also speaks of, personal possession. Expand on that for me, Glen.
So there are a couple of things. The first is, of course, 21 and over. There have been a lot of conversation as to if it should be 18 or if it should be 25 and 26. The perfect middle ground as a working committee was to propose 21. And for that, possession shall remain up to 56 grams of cannabis or up to 15 grams of cannabis resin. So that's possession.
Okay.
And we're asking that even if you're carrying, no one should know. Just as if you're using, no one should know. It is limited to private use.
Okay.
And it also leads on to another discussion, which is household planting. We're going to implement and propose a registered household planting scheme where individuals can plant up to 4 plants.
Okay.
ACP?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So it doesn't go beyond. So we move from the personal possession. So in your personal possession at your home, you're permitted, when the legislation is in full swing, as we would say, up to 4 plants.
Up to 4 plants.
Up to 4
Yes.
plants. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Nothing beyond that.
But there is an exception here for Rastafarians in the shrine.
Mm-hmm.
They are allowed to have more than the 56 and more than the 4. Yeah, the legislation make provisions for them, but within the confines of, I don't know if you call it the shrine or the temple or the tabernacle,
yeah.
or whatever it is.
Okay.
They have some access that is beyond that of the ordinary person.
Okay.
But even to add to that, while we are allowing, or we've proposed allowing household planting, it's important to note that there is a firm restriction on households that also act as licensed childcare centers.
Okay.
So we don't want our young persons and children to have direct access to it. So there will be legislations and restrictions on that. If your home also acts as a daycare, for instance, then we may have to prohibit you from having cannabis on those premises.
Well, straight up, we will say that's a no-no, more or less.
Definitely, definitely.
That's a no-no. All right. Now, there's always going to be that level of concerns when it comes to the whole home cultivation. What kind of thought has put into the monitoring system of this? If you get a drift of where I'm coming from. Yes, it's permitted for plants, but how would the authority be monitoring that? Would an individual have to, come in and say, hey, I'm decided I want to cultivate some marijuana? It's just a regular question of asking. I want to cultivate some marijuana or whatever. How is that concerns in relation to monitoring of this will be?
Okay, that's a very good question. I can start on this. Speaking from our policy statement drafting days, the one thing that we have considered, like I said earlier, is the protection of young persons and individuals. So with regards to monitoring, with every law, there are accompanying guidelines and regulations. So what we would have proposed then, it may look a bit differently once we actually sit and get our regulations through the necessary legislative processes, is to have a registration scheme. But because of the way this bill is worded, we now have to think of it from a registration scheme. Okay. I'm not going to go into the heavy details of that. Sure, but with the registration, we want to ensure that whoever is planting, it's on their property.
Okay.
That the 4 plants is limited to one household. If it happens to be a compound or a building where there are different households, say for instance 1 building with 4 apartments, then each apartment shall be treated as a household.
Okay.
We did propose, most definitely, that if you are doing outside or outdoor cannabis cultivation, whether it be for medicinal or horticultural purposes, that it is not see-through. So if it's a garden, for instance, pedestrians or drivers should not be able to see through and see that you have those plants. Okay. They also should not have access to those plants. Now, the question may come up, well, what about the kids or the young persons who are under the age of 21 and those said compounds? This is where the onus and the responsibility of the adults in the household comes in. Because remember, the registration approval can only be given to those over the age of 21. Okay. So we still need to depend on responsible adults and responsible use and ensure that the kids also don't have authorized access. And if you are to store, because you are allowed to carry 56 grams, then the kids also should not have access to those stores.
Is there, of course, a thought of having more public consultation in relation to this? Are we going to see that coming in soon?
Oh yeah, definitely. But it's not just public consultation, it's heavy public education to get everyone to understand that we're not here to encourage cannabis use, but if you do choose to use cannabis, we want that it's used responsibly. And it's also to raise awareness on 2 big big things. The first is the possibilities of a cannabis industry. It's not just for smoking, it's not just for drinking tea, but there's also the agro-processing aspects of it. You can use it to make fibers, you can get oils from it that you can add to food, and we can also talk about tourism and the possibilities of expanding into those industries as well. But most importantly, public education will cover aspects of mental health and the risks of irresponsible use of cannabis. So yes, look out. We do have a website out that we would have published recently. It's cannabiscommission@gov.gd. I encourage everyone to get on board, go to the website. We have a WhatsApp channel going on. We have been posting through the Ministry of Agriculture's Facebook page. GIS has done a couple postings for us as well. So you'd start to see more coming out, just so that individuals would understand that our goal is not to encourage, but to educate.
I agree. I totally agree.
Allow me to add something here. I want to add something to what the CEO has just said, because when people hear decriminalization of marijuana, everybody thinks of smoking. That's not what this legislation is driving at. So let's get this myth out of people's mind that we're encouraging smoking. People do use cannabis for other reasons. Yes. People use cannabis for medicinal purposes, therapeutic reasons. So I want to get it out of the minds of people that when they hear cannabis decriminalization, we're not promoting smoking. Smoking is one aspect of using cannabis. Yes. There are so many hosts of other ways or other uses that cannabis can be put to, and we want people to address their mind to the broader use and not just the smoking aspect of it.
Okay, understandably so. We due for a break. Let's take it. When we come back, we continue the conversation. Stay with us, folks. To the point. Classic Radio, GBN TV. We will be right back after the break. Don't touch it. No.
Follow Short Pre for your car stereos and music. Looking to upgrade your ride or replace that Japanese car radio? Prestige Audio is having a big car stereo sale for all vehicles. Toyota, Suzuki, Honda, Nissan, Jeep, and more. We've got you covered. Enjoy free installation at our Lucas Street branch with clean, professional, plug-and-play installs you can trust. Need powerful sound for your church, home, party, or DJ setup? Visit our XL Plaza, Grand Anne's location for PA systems, speakers, mixers, microphones, and car audio built to perform. 2 locations, one name you can trust. Visit Prestige Audio today, where sound meets excellence.
My name is Dr. Abigail Noel, and I am the head of department at the Accident and Emergency Department. One thing I love about Mount Sinai is their spirit of collaboration. They came in with ideas that have transformed our department in real time. The implementation of ID bands for every patient that comes through the emergency department. That has decreased patient errors. They have implemented defibrillators on every ward. Thus far, 128 staff members have been trained in defibrillator use. The huddle system is basically small meeting with all team members. It improves communication between staff members as well as with patients. This transformation means everything to the emergency department and by extension the health system of Grenada.
If you thought 2025 was amazing, get ready, Grenada. GBN's Old Young Fest is back and bigger than ever. Join us on Saturday, the 31st of January at Pearl's Airstrip for a full day of food, culture, and fun. Watch competitors battle it out for the title of the best original oil down, the best seafood oil down, and the most festive display. Enjoy live calypso and a steel pan, children's activities, traditional ring games, and plenty vibes for the whole family. Gates open at 10 a.m. Don't miss the celebrations of Grenada's national dish, GBN Old Young Fest, where culture, flavor, and tradition comes together. See you on Saturday, January 31st at Pearl's Airstrip. And remember,
Welcome back to our listeners. Welcome back to our viewers once again. To the point, Classic Radio and GBN TV. Folks, those of you who are just joining us with us this morning, we have, of course, members of the Cannabis Committee with us this morning. And, of course, it's certainly the direction of our conversation this morning. Again, gentlemen, welcome back once again. My next line of question goes around the direction of the restrictions, the enforcement and so forth. We briefly spoke about it previously, but maybe we could just, of course, get a little more details in reference to that. Let's talk a wee bit in terms of the public consumption. How are we going to define that? Smoking in public, we did have a brief, of course, you did give a brief, of course, contribution to that in the first segment of the program. Public consumption, how are that going to be in terms of the restriction and enforcement? How is that going to be rolled out?
All right, well, the Act make provisions, the Act defines what public place is. So it tells you where you cannot smoke. So if you choose to smoke in the places that the Act says is prohibited to smoke, then you're committing an offense. Right? In that case, though, you're not subject to arrest. I think you're subject to a ticket. So we are moved from the arrest stage to a fixed penalty ticketing system like you have in the Traffic Act. Because if you're decriminalizing, you want to make it easy, But there are provisions, and I want to make the distinction here. The principal legislation, which is the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act, it's still in force.
Yes.
What this legislation seeks to do is to carve out a part of that to make it easier for some people to use cannabis. But the principal act is still in force. For instance, the CEO spoke about 56 grams that you're allowed to carry. If you're in excess of the 56 grams, you're now committing an offense under the principal act, for which the penalty is to steal $250,000. Right. So it's critically important that people adhere to the provisions of the law and not just read this law in isolation. You have to read it in conjunction with the principal legislation. The police, no doubt in enforcement, will have the responsibility to enforce the provisions of this law as we have under the principal legislation. So if you are seen smoking in public place, we have to first determine that it's marijuana, because it has to be tested like everything else. And once we determine that it's marijuana, and once we determine that it falls under the definition of public place or the prohibition, if you're violating that, then you commit an offense and you're dealt with. So enforcement of this legislation will remain in the hands of the RGPF as is consistent with the principal legislation.
All right. Anything you want to add?
Sure. To add to what ACP Curwen had just said, I'm sure a lot of people would follow up with the question, well, what about our young persons and our children? What we're doing is ensuring that their protection is of paramount importance, and the police does indeed have a key role to play in all of this. But one thing I want to emphasize is that instead of arresting anybody or creating criminal records for anyone for under the age of 21, we want to move away from that prohibitive system into a restorative approach. So for anyone under the age of 21, if they're found in possession of cannabis, it will be confiscated. And mandatory drug counseling, education, and rehabilitation processes will proceed. And we're not just making amendments to the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act, there's also an adjacent amendment that will be made to the Rehabilitation Offenders Act.
Yeah, Offenders Act, yes.
That would lead to expungement and amnesty processes. But we also have other agencies on board, for instance, the Child Protection Authority. So if an individual under the age of 21, namely those under the age of 18, is found in possession or is found using, then the police would trigger administrative processes and the children would be reported to that authority so that they would also be able to step in and make the necessary decisions and take the necessary actions in order to ensure that their protection is...
The new legislation also speaks a lot about penalties, especially when it comes to, individual thinking about supplying to minors and, and so forth. Speak to me in relation to that. The penalty factor that may come about when the legislation, of course, gets in for full swing.
Let me just back up a little bit to add to something to what the CEO has just said. Now, for young people, we're moving away from punitive to rehabilitative. Okay. We're moving away from arrest to referrals. So they're not going to be arrested, but they're going to be referred. So if you're under the age that the law prescribes and you're found with marijuana, there is a mandatory referral process where you refer to the Child Protection Authority. Okay. The Child Protection Authority, they have some authority under the Act in determining how the process happens. See, you mentioned it, their counseling, their rehabilitation, and the law also allows them to make decisions that the Act doesn't provide for, but that is critically necessary for the rehabilitation of the young person. So that's the process for young people. The idea here is not to criminalize our young people and give them criminal conviction and criminal records and treat them as criminal. So if you're under the age, as a referral process is a whole different application of the law. If you're above 21 and you violate, then that's a whole different kettle of fish. But you asked the question of I was looking
in terms of what it speaks of the, how did I mention, the penalties that would come along, especially for individuals who decide, be suppliers, especially to minors and so forth. Right. And over the quantity that is permitted and so forth. Penalties range.
See, you can correct me here if I'm correct. I think that these provisions will remain with the principal legislation. Because you see, we have to forcefully defend and protect our young people. We can't talk about ticketing system and referral for adults who choose to profit on the backs of minors and destroying our young population. So we're still stringent on that, and the principal legislation will kick in, and the 250,000, in some cases 500,000 penalty is going to be enforced.
Right. That is correct.
All right. So that goes about especially individuals who may have had previous convictions in relation to be suppliers per se. You understand? So they remain under that principle legislation as remains still.
But the Act makes provision for the expungement of some records, and I think some young people will be happy to hear that. Right. I've had parents and young people coming to say, hey, listen, what can be done to me? I get convicted for marijuana. I need to go for my visa. I have an opportunity to travel permanently. This is on my record. Okay. Now, what the legislatures have done here, what we've proposed is that if you found in quantity less what we have proposed and less, and you're convicted for that, you have an opportunity of getting that conviction expunged. So we wipe your record clean. If your quantity was beyond that, you stay convicted, your record stays with you. Okay. But if you're within the quantity that the Act speaks to, then you can get your record expunged, and it happens as though you never had a conviction at all. It gone out the door. So that's, I think, it's critically important, particularly for our young people who may have had some misstep with the law, find themselves in a situation where they need to move on now in life, and they are hindered by the fact that they have a criminal conviction for what might be a marijuana cigarette. Yeah, so that record can now go out the door, and they have an opportunity to rebuild their lives from there.
Right. I'll say, I'm really happy to hear that, because there are lots of young people who have opportunities may have come about, and because of those minor incidents that may have occurred, they're no longer able to pursue careers and so forth as in relation to that. So certainly when the law gets into full swing, it's still in that particular stage as it is right now. Because sometimes folks may have the misunderstanding, because of what they heard in Parliament, it's a go. And I'm happy that you folks are here to kind of ease the mind of people to understand that the stage that is at right now, there's still lots more to come about in terms of that. Policy and goals in relation from the committee themselves. Of course, the medical industry, you spoke about that earlier on, resources that would be allocated for that and so forth. Speak to me in terms, let's talk about the medical industry. That's the thought of going into that level. We're not there yet, but the thought of that. Let's talk in relation to that.
Okay, great. So I'd start off. So the working committee, from the policy standpoint, would have suggested a two-phase approach to all of this.
Yes.
The first stage is to essentially decriminalize cannabis for spiritual, private, and therapeutic use via legislative amendments that we would have spoken of earlier. The second phase involves building a robust cannabis industry, and you would have heard in Parliament, if anyone would have listened to the sitting of the House of Representatives, that is a Grenadian first initiative.
Okay.
So, with that being said, the main driving force underlying all of this work is for the establishment of a medical industry. It may look different from the way that other countries have done it because we're lagging behind, but we're not behind. It's actually a good thing. We get to study the other Caribbean islands who have went ahead with decriminalization for medical industry. And as we would have stated earlier, there's so many things that we can do with it. There are individuals who are already using cannabis for the therapeutic and medical benefits of it. This legislative process is just to help them along so that they won't feel like a criminal for self-administration for their relief. We would have noted from speaking with other Caribbean jurisdictions, namely St. Vincent, that in their system, over half of the individuals who use cannabis for therapeutic benefits are women. And even overall, a lot of the individuals who use cannabis would use it for pain management. You can use it to help with sleep. You can use it to help treat end-of-life care. You can also use it to help lessen the symptoms, and not to cure anything, but to lessen the symptoms of any sort of neurological conditions that individuals might have. So that's the main driving force under all of this, is so that individuals who chooses to use cannabis for the therapeutic and the medicinal benefits won't be criminalized and won't feel like criminals for something that is needed for their overall mental and physical health.
Okay. Anything you want to add to that?
No, except to say that when we're talking about the medical use of cannabis or that industry, currently we've had concerns with people visiting Grenada who are dependent on marijuana in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. It's illegal here. So tourists coming here and depending on it poses a problem. Now, when that legislation is developed beyond where it is now, people will be able to get from the doctor the prescription, and be able to carry it around for medicinal uses, because we're moving not just where we are now. This industry is being developed. As the CEO said, we are in phase 1. Phase 2 is the bigger issue of the industry, and I like the fact that all legislatures thought about Grenada first industry, because in some jurisdiction where it is developed, locals get squeezed out, and the big monopoly from outside comes in. Okay. Now the Grenada approach is different. You heard it in Parliament. It's a Grenada first approach. So we Grenadians have the first opportunity to get into the medicinal industry when it comes on stream, and that I'm just grateful for.
All right. Is there a particular format that when that industry kicks in, the medical industry, there's a particular format that you would like to see it go by? When I say format, you speak of the tourism and part of it. We speak of Grenada first in terms of how locals will be permitted to do what they want to do with the industry. I hope it wouldn't be the case where individuals are able to just stand by the road and sell something because they think it's a marijuana cake or whatever. Okay. that particular format. If you get where I'm coming from with that.
You can go ahead.
Yeah, there is provisions already written into this part of the Act that makes arrangement for registration process. Okay. Going to doctor and getting whatever you need from a doctor, whether it's a certificate to say that you're dependent on that or you use it. So the minister will be given provisions under the Act to make regulations for the effectiveness of the Act. Everything cannot be written into an Act. The Act is written, and the intent of the legislation is put together, and then in most acts there is a provision that gives the minister responsible, in this case the Minister of Agriculture, the authority to make regulations for the effective governing of the Act. So he will now have to determine how a number of things will be rolled out, what processes will go in place to give effect to the provisions of this Act. Everything is not written here, but the minister has the authority to do that. But rest assured, there will be control. It wouldn't be a system that is chaotic, where everybody do what they want, when they want, how they want. There'll be registration, there'll be licensing, and there will be control, so that we have a system that is not chaotic, but in order.
And just to add that there are many different industry models or industry types that we can lean into. We're speaking heavily on a medicinal industry. The regulations and guidelines of that industry would look very different for something from our agro-processing industry if we decide to go down that road and focus mainly on hemp for the production of different things that you can get oils, you can use the roots and the fibers and the stems to make cloth, that we can then bring into, let's say, our boating industry for the making of sails and so forth. So there are different types of industry models that we can lean into. And the second phase, which we have started, but we're going to really dive into at this point, is to determine what that is going to look like. So just to give you a bit more of insight, if we decide to go agro-processing versus medical industry, then, or if we decide to do them at the same time, the licensing schemes under both would look very different.
Yes.
The regulatory processes would look very different. But at the end of the day, our underlying goal is to ensure that it would not be chaotic, as ACP Curwen stated earlier. It'll be well regulated, well monitored. You asked about monitoring earlier.
Yes.
Those licensing schemes go hand in hand with monitoring and evaluation, and over time we'll be able to look back and measure where we started, where we are now, and if there are further changes that needs to be made to suit the benefits of Grenadians over foreign investors first.
All right. My question before the break, and thus far with the legislation and the amendments and the tweaks and so forth that was made, is it the best for Grenada right now, would you say?
Undoubtedly. I think it's the best. We have done a lot of work here, a lot of research went into our work. We have traveled outside of Grenada looking at the industry in other countries before. And as CEO said, though we are the back end of this, we are happy that we are, because we get to look at the mistakes they make, we get to look at the challenges other countries have had, and so we can now tailor, model our industry in a way that takes on board all of what we've seen outside and what the research shows us. In fact, I'm going to tell you this. A lot of people have been clamoring for 18 years. Across Grenada, you hear it. Oh, people can vote at 18 and this and that and the other. But gladly, we've had some really good representation of the committee. Dr. Sean Charles, Mr. Hector, those are the experts in that field who have been able to bring the science to the table to show why we should not yield to 18. There's been some serious discussions on 18 as opposed to other ages. But you see, we have to be guided by science. We didn't just wake up and decided, okay, this is the age that we're going at because that's the age we want. We had to be informed and guided by what the science say on the development of the brain of an 18-year-old as opposed to a 21 or 25-year-old. So what you see in the legislation was not something that the committee feels should be there. The committee work was grounded and rooted in research, grounded and rooted in the data that's available, grounded and rooted in the exposure we have had, looking at the industry in other countries and adopting best practices for Grenada. So I'm satisfied that what we put forward is the best that's available at this point.
All right, great. We drew for a break. Let's take that break. When we come back, we continue the conversation. Stay with us, folks. To the point, Classic Radio GBN TV. We will be right back. Don't touch it out.
Farming because you feel happy in your spirit and dealing with plants because plants is life. So with that now I love farming. I love to provide food for the nation and I eat what I grow and I feel happy. My name is Franklin Battis. I've been a farmer for 35 years.
Philip Edwards, and I have been in the farming profession about 8 years now. I mean I was actually looking for some produce back then which I didn't have, and I accidentally stumbled on him.
He comes straight to me and he say, I'm looking for some lettuce. I say, good, I have lettuce.
That's how we actually started. God put us together.
He said he believed that God sent him straight to me, right? And from that time, we have been going on strong, and we have been in one accord. When you're dealing with the places like the food fair, he helps you to deal with quality, and this is what is important.
It started with this food fair on the Carnage, and I mean, from day one when I went there, I asked them, I told them what I was supplying, and they happily accepted and asked me to bring some of the produce. At the moment we supply a range of products, tomatoes, lettuce sometimes, cucumbers,
pumpkin, pak choy, and celery and parsley. Because I know they want quality, I am always keep my field in a decent manner, right? When packaging my foods for them, I make sure that I wash it properly in different waters. So with that, you get it properly cleaned off. What you see with your eyes at the first time, he either turn you off or he make you feel that you want more of what you see. So this is why I keep my field clean and I keep my vegetable clean and I wash it properly.
when I contact them with my produce, over 90% of the time they'll accept them. So without the input and the purchase and so on, it will be a little difficult for us to survive and to make it. So we really appreciate their business. I am Philip Edwards.
I'm Franklin Baptiste
And I work with Food Fair
to provide you fresh vegetables.
Welcome back to our listeners. Welcome back, viewers, once again. It's Sort of Point Classic Radio, GBN TV. Welcome back to my guests. My next question, which is need for open debate, will also leave the option for our listeners and viewers out there. If you do have a question or two that does concern you want to ask, of course, my guests, feel free to do so in the next segment. 435-2041. We have both the WhatsApp and the direct line. The question has been asked: Will the legislation be implemented, and folks saying they're freeing up a wee bit of individuals who are able to smoke in the comfort of their own homes? Would we see more use of the drug as it already stands? No. Would you see that? Let's talk to me in relation to that.
That's a very good question. I can begin just briefly. From our conversations with other Caribbean jurisdictions, there hasn't been any statistics or data to prove that it increases with decriminalization legislations enforced. So in short, no.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the onus is still on those individuals over the age of 21, if they choose to use, to please do so responsibly and within the confines of the law.
Yeah, and I also feel that if you want to smoke marijuana, whether there is a legislation or not, you'll smoke marijuana.
Yeah.
If you don't want to smoke marijuana, no amount of decriminalization could pull you, towards that trend. It's a personal issue. For some people, it's a moral issue, and decriminalizing it doesn't necessarily mean that more people is going to smoke. If you don't want to smoke, you just will not smoke.
Yes.
And we have not seen data anyway to suggest that in countries that have decriminalized, they're seeing an increase in smoking. And so we don't think we are different. The region is the culture in the region is kind of similar. And what attains in one, likely you can find, the same trend in others. And we have not seen it anyway that we have researched or we have gone. And so we don't think that decriminalizing means that we'll see more good agent smoking. Right. The data doesn't support that.
And the data doesn't also support that we see an influx of other influences coming through either.
Right. I mean, and even if you're smoking marijuana, I believe that the people who want to smoke are already smoking.
Yeah.
And if they want to take other hard drugs, they would have already been taking it. The decriminalization of marijuana now doesn't necessarily be a gateway drug for harder drugs. If you wanted to go by way of the harder drugs, you would have been doing it already, because a lot of people hide and smoke. They hide and smoke marijuana. So if you want to take the harder drug, you probably would have been hiding and doing that anyway. So now that we're decriminalizing, I don't think the data also supports that it's going to act as a gateway drug for harder drug like cocaine or heroin. Or we have not seen that anywhere else. And certainly we hope that is not the trend that we find here in Grenada.
All right. We do have our first caller online. Caller, you're live. Good morning, and I beg of you to be brief, please. Go right ahead, please.
Hello, hi, good morning. Yes,
good morning.
GP, good morning to you. Yes. Something I'll be very brief. Something I'm very confused of there. The last when in Parliament, the Prime Minister said he has keeping with the manifesto, and he talk about legalizing it. And then, on the other hand, they're saying they're decriminalizing it. I'm very confused And actually, it doesn't alone. I'm very confused because here is the leader of the nation saying one in breath in the mouth, and the next thing in the same parliament. You know, he used up the both of them. You know, I'm very confused. I don't know which one to go at. Thank you.
Thank you. But I think we answered that already for the morning. But
we can expound a bit more. So thank you, caller, for your question. Great question. To clarify, we have two phases that we're implementing. In this first phase, we're talking about decriminalization for specific purposes. What was alluded to, what was spoken of in Parliament is legalization that we're going to target in our phase 2. So when we introduce our cannabis industry, that's when we can speak of legalization, but to a certain extent, that's where we speak of legalization for medicinal industry. So we're not there yet. We're working our way up. This decriminalization via amendments to the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Existing Act is just a foundation that would help us to get to legalization for a medicinal industry. So thanks again for your question. Great question.
All right, we do have another caller. Caller via WhatsApp. Good morning, you're live.
Hey, good morning. DP.
Good morning.
Mr. Curwen and the young lady, I didn't get her name. Okay. I know we've been speaking about the decriminalization of marijuana. Okay, but what I want to bring to the table, because this is something that children get involved in, because I see it in the United States, where kids up to 10 years on the bus and the train rolling marijuana can't wait to get aside to smoke it. Even right in front of the police, they're selling marijuana. But my concern is something they call edibles. So I want to know, is something that attract kids, because they come in cookies, it come like chocolate, and something we call brownies up here. I don't know what they call it in Grenada. All right, so I want to know how we're going to address that part of it, the edible section. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you very much. Respond to the caller.
Again, another great question. Thank you so much. I'm going to go back to our policy statement discussion days in 2024. This is something that we would have spoken of as a committee at length. It's something that we would have consulted with the cabinet again at length. Edibles is one thing that we're definitely not encouraging at this time. ACP spoke earlier of the science, and the science has shown us that it's very difficult for us to measure down to the milligram of a cannabinoid. The cannabinoid, just so you know, is the active ingredient, the psychoactive ingredients in cannabis. We cannot measure down to the cannabinoid, be it THC or CBD, and how it affects the human body. And because of our concerns with the possible negative side effects on the neurological development of young persons and children, edibles is something that we're not going to encourage, and I don't think would even encourage it when we go into our phase 2 for the industry. It falls into our ethos of public health and safety and protection of young persons and children.
Okay. Let me chip in here to say that edibles are marijuana. If tested and it's tested positive for marijuana, then it's marijuana. If you're selling that to kids, remember we spoke earlier on about the protection of our young people, and the Act makes provisions for that. So if you choose to do candies, etc., and offer that to sell to young people, you will be violating under the Act. If these candies can be tested to be marijuana, and there is no doubt they are and will be, and so you will be held accountable for doing that. Until the legislation open up that window, as the CEO said, we're not there, we're not encouraging it. So we want to employ here this morning. The decriminalization process now doesn't give license to do all of what the caller has indicated, do these edibles, and we see it in all different shape, sizes, and form. It remains illegal under the Act.
All right, we do have another caller. Caller, you're live. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We speak about 4 trees per person. See, if there is 5 persons living in a house, everybody can go 4 trees. That's a lot of weed. Then you say again that you got to smoke in your personal space. You're protecting the children. So where is your personal space? Not in your house or in your car. When you have kids in the car and you're smoking, are you protecting them? When you have kids at the house and you're smoking, are you protecting them? So they say we cannot sell edibles for the kids. It's like a joke. At home, the kids will be smoking this as well. Have a nice day, brother.
Thank you, caller. Respond to the caller.
The caller said something that is not correct. I don't think we said 4 trees per person. We said 4 trees per household.
Yes.
So if there's 5 people in the house, 5 4 is 20, then we're not talking about that. Yeah. The household has 5 people, 4 trees for that household. That's point number 1. Point number 2, I don't agree with the caller on you have a responsibility to your children. So because the act say you should smoke in the privacy of your home, does that mean you're going to light up in the presence of your 2-year-old or your 3-year-old? Where does your responsibility start and stops? So giving you the authority to smoke in your home, you must be responsible enough now to know that the kids have gone to school, the house is empty, I'm home alone, let me have my smoke. What will make you think it's okay in the presence of your own kids? Somebody have to tell you that? No, you need to know that you have a responsibility for the safety and protection of your children first and foremost. And if you don't do that on your own, and the state has to do it for you, then the state will do it for you.
Mm-hmm. And then to add to that, we're not encouraging the smoking of cannabis in your cars. By law, as it would be written, your private space is limited to your household, not to your car. It doesn't extend to your car. So if you want to use, do so at home.
Okay. We do have another caller. Caller, you're live. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, sir. My concept of a tree quite different to your concept. The rule says, as you say, or as you all have said, 4 trees. I'm now asking you, does the trees go to a certain side and you call it a tree? Or can it go to 5 feet, 2 feet, or 6 feet and the width? Or how many branches should it have? Explain that to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. Thank you.
Okay, so great question. A cannabis plant is a cannabis plant. Some people might substitute and call it a cannabis tree, but it depends on the grower's experience with cannabis. We found that if someone is a master grower, they can have trees going up to a couple feet that will be way taller than I am, and I'm a bit vertically impaired in that department. But you can get a tree growing up to a couple feet well. That can even go past 6 feet. It's something that ACP Curwen and I would have seen when we visited St. Vincent last October. But for someone who doesn't have a green thumb or is growing for the first time or doesn't know the particulars on the necessary conditions to grow a tree, a cannabis plant or a cannabis tree well, they'd probably only get it up to maybe a couple inches. So it depends on the experience that the planter or grower has. But the cannabis plant is varied, really.
Okay. We do have another caller. Caller, you're live. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Telesford. Greetings, how are you?
Doing good, sir. Let's hear from you.
Greetings to your guests. Listen, I don't want to go too much in depth because I've had my experience with this thing since in the 1970s and so on, and I know it. And of course, what works for me doesn't work for others. It's obvious because we all made up differently, but I know the confusion that it causes in the head in the head when you drink and smoke, as we used to say at the same time, in other words, mix them. So we'll wait and see. The science should direct us. I trust that we're doing that. But listen, why I really call is to ask this young lady, your guest there, to clarify for me when she stated a while ago, well, this would have been discussed already, and in the parliament the question would have been asked, and the parliament it would have been discussed. Young lady, what do you mean by that? I'll wait here because I may have wished to make another comment. Can you explain to me why these things hadn't been discussed and asked before?
Sorry, you'd have to help me along and clarify your question.
Well, listen to me, young lady. Would have plus the past participle never tells you and can never tell you under the circumstances of the English language what happened in the past. If it would have happened, it never happened. I just like to draw that to your attention. I'm just a pedant. And maliciously so too. Thank you very much. Have a nice day, will you?
Thank you, caller. Thank you very much for your contribution. Someone is asking via the WhatsApp, if I've decided to plant, how can I obtain? Let me get that bit of information back this way. How can I obtain plants? What would be the general procedure, registration, etc.?
Okay, great question. So I'd start off with registration for household planting. the intent is to, at the end of the bill, at the regulations, as a matter of fact, as ACP Curwen would have alluded to earlier, you would propose a form. There are some bits of information that the Ministry of Legal Affairs may ask for. For instance, they might ask for a deed just to ensure that whatever land or property you intend to plant on is yours indeed. But basic information, we want to know your name, your address, your telephone number, maybe how many individuals there are in the household, if there are any kids in the household. But the underlying intent of that registration scheme is to ensure that everyone who is around the vicinity is protected. Just so in the event that if something is to happen, you can feel comfortable enough and safe enough to call the police. Okay. For your protection.
Let me just add, GT, that the 4-plant household we're talking about is not random. You don't just get up tomorrow morning and decide you're planting 4 trees. There has to be control. So we want to know who is planting 4 trees. So that registration process, it doesn't prevent you from planting, because remember, the Act allows you or gives you the right to plant your 4 trees, but there has to be control. I want to know if 4 trees are being planted by 20 households in Grenada as opposed to 300 households in Grenada. How would we know that if there is not a registration process? So you register and given your authority to plant your 4 tree, and you're not disturbed by doing that. But don't wake up tomorrow morning and decide, I'm going to go and plant 4 trees and do away with all of the other restrictions, conditions that are in place for it. So registered, we know who is planting, and as the CEO say, though the law say you can do 4 trees, the minister may deny you in particular from planting your 4 tree, because all of the other antecedent circumstances might be present. Kids in the house is not protected, is not secure. So there's a lot of safeguards that are in place to ensure that when this act is rolled out, everyone is protected and it is done properly.
All right. I mean, I'm happy for that clarification, because you get the conversation ready. Folks are saying, well, I can plant 4 trees. Imagine you're in a particular community that you live in. Maybe the other residents may not be happy that it's been grown in that particular. Always been in your comfort of your private home, but folks may be against that. Petitions may be put out. I'm not happy that X has been permitted to grow or whatever. So that doesn't mean that everybody will be permitted to grow.
Yeah, the conditions have to be
that's
right.
why I mentioned in an earlier statement, the level of consultation that still has to go into this, a conversation with the general public, and to speak to them more in relation to the do's and don'ts that comes along with this. Yeah. We do have another caller via WhatsApp. WhatsApp caller, you're live. Good morning.
Yeah, morning, GT, and morning to you.
WhatsApp caller.
Yeah, morning. Are you hearing me?
Loud and clear. Go right ahead, please.
Yeah, say morning to you and your esteemed guests, and also your listeners and viewers. Now, I've avoided being much part of this conversation. I mean, of the conversation over the decriminalization of cannabis, because to me, a lot of time, a lot of triviality and ignorance are displayed. But I want to bring in an aspect that might not be considered. First of all, I think what the government is doing is of great help, in the sense that it would sort of bring the trade above ground. And also, but have they considered, just as how you go and buy plants at the beginning of every agricultural season or rain season, you go and buy plants at the Maribo Center. Are they considering the cultivating and people could come and buy the thing there, so that at least that would be one way of knowing who has the plant, along with the registration and so on, as they explained? I was thinking about that, and also that could be a stream of income for the country. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much.
Great question, caller. Thank you so much. As a matter of fact, the Secretariat has been, and we have included our agronomists at the Ministry of Agriculture in this process. The intent or the thought is that we can source seeds, open a seed bank and store, because there are many different strains of cannabis that would survive and grow and thrive under different conditions. But to actually get as far as propagation of the plant. So we'd have to sit and clarify and draft our regulations properly. This may come in phase 2 when we start talking about industry, but you are correct. Propagation for plants so that individuals can come and get it from the government is something that we have taken into consideration in our conversations last year and the year before.
Okay. We do have one other caller and would be the final caller for this morning. Caller, you're live. Good morning. Welcome.
Yeah. Mr. Jay, looking at Mr. Cohen's face, I don't know if he's crying or if he's smiling. But I'm not saying that most of the police officers, seasonal police officers, have been in the force for a long while, who've been trained to fight weed and go around and fight drugs. Are the police force or the government retraining them? But Grenada people going to provoke police officers. They win their face and smoke people in the police station and just provoke police officers. You know what this thing goes with these people in this country already. Are you retraining them to deal with that? Have a nice day, sir.
All right.
Thank you, caller. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. Well, we don't expect it to be blown in our faces because, as we indicated earlier on, it's for private smoking, so you do that at your home and not necessarily in the streets where the police officers are. And you ask about retraining of the police officers. Listen, we are sensitive as an organization. We are the enforcers of the law, and when the law changes, we change what we do. That is how the organization is built and developed. In fact, I'm not sure if I should say that, but I'm going to say it anyway. Prior to us getting to this point, under the former government, when the former Prime Minister triggered the whole issue of getting into decriminalization, the police force started to make that shift. Even without the legislation, we realized where government was going. So we had lessened our enforcement on small quantities. So if we had held you with a marijuana cigarette a couple years ago, not only today, we make the decision whether or not we want to charge you or not. If you're cooperative, respectful, in most cases, you're allowed to go. However, if you belligerent, etc., might say to the police, the law is still enforced, we're going to arrest you. But we have already started to shift away from strict enforcement for small quantity, even before this legislation comes about. So there's not much retraining we need to do. The forces hierarchy in nature, instructions from the commissioner passes down, and everybody implement whatever those instructions are. So I don't think it's about retraining, it's about getting the message to our officers that there is a shift in our enforcement procedures and policy that we expect the force to follow.
Okay. Of course, Mr. Curwen, once again, of course, SP Curwen, of course, Mr. Noel, I want to thank you both for being on the program this morning. I'll give you opportunity, any closing comments you want to make before we take a wrap for today.
Briefly, thank you so much for the opportunity in speaking with us this morning. Just to end off and to conclude, remember that we're not encouraging the use of cannabis, but we're saying that if you choose to do so responsibly. The Cannabis Secretariat and the Cannabis Commission is going to push as much information and educational bits as we move forward. Of course, the bill needs to be now moved on to the upper house. The senators need to sit and discuss it and debate accordingly. And most importantly, just note that our goal is to ensure that whatever cannabis industry model that we do decide to build on, we want to ensure that it's a Grenadian first industry, but most importantly, that to have our laws be globally compliant and locally transformative so that Grenadians can benefit from it.
I mean, the final thing I want to say is, if you're going to participate in the decriminalization of marijuana, and based on what the caller earlier on has said, I want you to do so responsibly. Remember, the children must be protected. Young people must be protected. So whatever you choose to do, please bear that in mind.
All right. I want to thank you both once again for coming on the program today. It's a pleasure having you, and I certainly did, of course, get to understand a whole lot in terms of the legislation and the process of going forward. And I sure it will not be our final program we have, and there will be much more in relation to this, because this is a conversation that we'll have to have a whole lot more of in terms of the entire, of course, educating the Grenadian public on the procedures that come. Thank you both once again.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, folks, that's what we're going to take a wrap for today's edition of To The Point. Thanks all who contributed to us in this program. Have a good one, folks. That's where we say goodbye.